Later, my father was organizing a local chapter of the CSO in San Jose, and he was looking for men and women who would be interested in standing up for themselves and for their communities. So he was talking to a public health nurse, looking for leads. And the public health nurse said, well, why don't you go talk to Helen and Cesar Chavez? They might be interested. So the nurse gave Helen a heads up that this guy was going to come over. She tells Cesar, and Cesar says, nothing doing. This is going to be another anthropologist from Stanford or San Jose State coming down to ask us insulting questions. Yeah? So tell him I'm not home. So Cesar hid it out across the street from Richard's house. My dad comes the first night, comes back the second night, and Helen knows he's going to come back a third night. So she says to Cesar, I'm not going to lie for you anymore. If you don't want to talk to him, you tell him. So Cesar reluctantly is there that night, won't let my dad even in the door. They talk out in the driveway. My dad explains what he wants to do. Cesar agrees to invite people over. But Cesar's still suspicious and pretty hostile. So he hatches a plan, because at the time Cesar was a smoker, and his plan was when he moved the cigarette from his left hand to his right, that was the go-ahead to start insulting my father and just kick him out of the house. So my father comes into this house meeting with maybe 8 to 10 people, unsuspecting that there was any kind of a movida by Cesar. And Cesar didn't reveal this little plan for 10 more years. Didn't tell him what happened. So a few years back, I was looking at my father's papers, and I read his notes from that night. And what he wrote was, he says, after 10 minutes, the meeting is going nowhere. No one will look up from the floor. Cesar is not reacting. They're not asking questions. None of my stories are connecting. And then my father wrote, then I remembered that Cesar said that some of his buddies were Pachucos, graduates of San Quentin, not Stanford or San Jose State, a tough crowd. Then then my dad wrote, I knew I had to tell the story of Bloody Christmas like I'd never told it in my life. And the story my father told, briefly, was that in early 1950s, a group of 3 or 4 Mexican Americans, several of whom were veterans of World War II, on Christmas Eve night were coming out of a restaurant in East LA around midnight, and they were arrested by the cops for being a Mexican American. And they were taken into the Hollenbeck police station, and there was a drunken revelry of cops, of 40 or 50 cops, and they went after these poor guys, and they beat them black, blue, and bloody all night long. And there'd never been a successful prosecution of cops for police brutality. But by this time, the Community Service Organization had registered thousands of people to vote, had made powerful alliances with the labor community, with the Jewish community, the liberal democratic community, with NAACP, and a number of powerful coalition had been built that the CSO was a part of. So they used the strategic and powerful relationships that they had built up to make sure there was accountability. And not only were these cops tried and prosecuted, they were sentenced to prison. So what Cesar would tell many of us over the years was when my father told that story, he forgot about his plan. Because what Cesar said, your father painted a picture of how he built power that just, it was so clear and so compelling you could taste it. So the guy that was supposed to come started to interrupt my father because he didn't know it was a change of plan. Cesar gently takes him outside and says, change of plans, you can go home. Came back. For the next 3 weeks, Cesar went to every meeting with my father and really became so committed to organizing. He saw what organizing could do. And so my dad was his teacher and gave him books about Gandhi and so forth. And they worked side by side for the next 40 years.